Hi guys, Paul here. Welcome back to the Anfield View. I hope you're all keeping well. We're going to go with straight in for a midweek, or technically Thursday morning, but a midweek World Cup roundup. So let's get fully straight on and up to speed on what's been happening with the World Cup this week for you guys who've been at work or just missed some of the games, and then give you a bit of a synopsis as to sort of the performances that has really happened. We start off really picking up from where we left it. Ivory Coast versus Ecuador. Wow, tale of two halves, isn't it? This game really, Ecuador played fantastic in the first half, hit the post twice. Second one that hit the post really should have put away. I mean, it wasn't a bad shot, but frankly, he really should have put away, to make that 1-0. I mean, you could have no complaints if Ecuador were 2-0 up in that game. Yan Diarmi played well in the first sort of 15 minutes for the Ivory Coast. Then they sort of stopped giving him the ball really for the rest of the half. Yeah, it was very much an intriguing game because as the game went on, Ivory Coast definitely played much better in the second half. It, I mean, you couldn't argue with a draw. I mean, Ivory Coast managed to pick up a late winner in this game. A draw was probably the fair result based on the whole sort of 90 minutes. I think Ecuador can feel pretty hard done by losing that game. They didn't play badly by any means. I mean, Ecuador, as history would tell you, if you follow any of their results, they have a bad habit of not scoring enough goals, essentially. There's a lot of nil-nil draws, there's a lot of just not enough goals there. And they did more than enough in terms of creativity. I mean, look, the first one hit the bar, fair enough. The second one has to go in. It's not on. Sometimes you can hit the post of the bar and be unlucky, and sometimes it's just not good enough when it comes to finishing. A goal is pretty big. I mean, we all know football. A goal isn't, a goal is not like a mousetrap. It is pretty big, even with a 6'4" keeper, etc. in it. It's pretty big. It's not that hard to put a ball in and out, albeit pressure, etc. And so the second one really should have got in. I had the feeling, to be honest, at that point, if Ecuador would have gone 1-0 up, maybe they would have gone two as well. Yeah, I feel pretty sorry for them in that game, but you can't argue that Ivory Coast definitely got better as the game went on and nicked it to go 1-0. Probably a fair result would have been a draw, but if you don't take your chances at this level, then invariably you keep people in the game. It's the nature of the beast, isn't it, really? Then we move on to Sweden versus Tunisia, 5-1. Yeah, great. Good goal by Isak. Would say the keeper probably should have saved it, really. I mean, he went really good run, good pass to him out on the left, really good run, cut inside, hit the ball really early. I think that's what caught the keeper on the hop. Um, I would argue, really, you would expect the keeper to probably save that. Frankly, it wasn't. Look, it was a good shot. It wasn't, fantastic. I mean, the real skill was the run and taking an early shot by Isak. So no fault on himself. Pretty solid performance. Gorkias, from Arsenal scored a goal as well. Yeah, pretty emphatic performance by Sweden. Somewhat underwhelmed by Tunisia in that game, but yeah, you never argue when you score that many goals. A pretty start to finish overwhelming sort of Sweden win. Never really looked in any doubt in that game. Really, it's just a question of how many ultimately on that front. But a good run out for Isak. Hopefully, fingers crossed, this World Cup will actually benefit his fitness and not have the detrimental element. You would think, given the fact he hasn't played pretty much for a year, bar a few point appearances here and there, it can only put him in a better position. Fingers crossed, we say touching wood, lighting candles, and everything else that you can do for him to stay fit. Then move on to Spain versus Cape Verde. 0-0. There's two things that you have to take away from that game. Spain are toothless without the two creativity players, i.e. Yamal and Inaki Williams. Are we surprised about that? No. We sort of knew that before the game, but equally, you would have thought that it'd have way too much for Cape Verde. Hey, the proverbial hats off to the Cape Verde keeper. There's two keepers that deserve a standing ovation. You know, for probably the best performances at the first round stage of this World Cup. The Qatar keeper, unreal. I'm putting some of the better keepers to shame. And some of the keepers have been diabolical with their performances. I'll come on to them in a minute. But yeah, hats off. Phenomenal performance by the Cape Verde keeper. Phenomenal performance by the Qatar keeper. Hey, you just if you get a move off the back of that to some to some decent clubs around the world, heck, you deserve it. Because fantastic performances. 0-0, Spain, just not good. I mean, you got to do better than that. Even with two of your key players out, you just got to do better than that. The problem that Spain have is that they just don't have. They haven't had a world class striker really since what Costa. Yeah, well, I'm thinking what Costa, Torres, Villa. So so you're looking at Costa would have been the last one, then Fernando Torres, then David Villa, and then Raul and Morientes, etc. Before that. And you look at it like they've got talent at the moment, but they're having to sort of fudge it a little bit. I mean, a little bit sort of typical of the way football is. In many ways, there isn't that many teams that actually have an out and out world star striker, as in like i.e. a Haaland type striker. Everyone's playing with inverted wingers that aren't really strikers per se. I mean, and as you see with the Spain team, is that the bloke up front was Laswell played all right, nothing crazy. They just haven't had. Yeah, I think they had Morata, didn't they, for a while? Morata, when he was at Real Madrid, actually looked like a really good prospect. Whether at World Cup, I know they did in the Euros, whether at World Cup status you can go all the way and win a World Cup without having that well-beaten striker. Because look, when they won all those trophies, for as much as Iniesta and Xavi were great, which they were, equally David Villa and Fernando Torres were also crucial, for themselves. And so they don't have that now. And they're going to rely heavily on Yamal coming back to fitness and Williams as well. So, yeah, if you're a marketer, we say have to do much, much better. You would expect to see a vastly more improved performance in game two. Next game, Belgium versus Egypt. That's just a tale of sort of where they both are, aren't they? Belgium, have got the remains of the bygone times, doesn't he? Kevin De Bruyne are pretty much at the end of his career now. Same with Lukaku. They don't really have any, sort of bunch of superstar players. I suppose you've got Doku would be the standout of the younger generation. But look, Belgium habitually over the years used to have one or two stars in their team. And then they went for that golden generation where they had a whole team of great stars. Obviously spearheaded by Eden Hazard and De Bruyne being the two top of the tree A plus world class stars that obviously could get in any top team, and hence why they were getting to semi-finals of World Cups, etc. And so, but they just are where they at. Whether they ever get that generation again, you just never know. On that front, Egypt, similar situation really. Mo Salah's obviously at the back end of his career, toiled, played, didn't do anything wrong, didn't really do that much. Marmoush is a funny one, really. I like Marmoush. And I liked him when he was at Leverkusen alongside Ekateke, and it's been up when he first came into City, he sort of lit the world on fire. And then last year, with all the signings that they made, he sort of got pushed into the background, it feels. It was almost very much like the Ryan Cherky show from sort of Christmas onwards. But then he's not the only one. Phil Foden's fallen off a cliff in the last sort of year as well. Man City as well. And it's really been like you say, Cherky and Semenya really from sort of January onwards. Didn't really do anything really on that front. It was a pretty level game, really. And, they both teams where they're at really in terms of the talent that they have. The next game was obviously Uruguay's game, which was 1-1, Saudi versus Uruguay. Yeah, crazy old game this one. I mean, Saudi won 1-0 up, and then in the second half, Uruguay literally peppered them like crazy. For the last sort of 35 minutes, you thought, are Uruguay actually going to score? The keeper was taking save after save after save after save. I could say, Cape Verde, Saudi, and Qatar keepers, and tip your hat. I mean, they just produced miracles. I mean, he was keeping Saudi sort of won it 1-0 ahead for forever, and eventually Uruguay got the goal. You thought they could probably, maybe with another 10 minutes they'd have got the second. Just took them a while to really build that sort of head of steam really with Uruguay in that game. But once they did, um, yeah, I think if Uruguay can start quicker in the next game, they've still got talent in the team. It's post Luis Suarez, it's the post Cavani, it's the post Forlan era. That they went through a spell, 15 years of having some of the world's greatest strikers all playing for them. Hence why they were what they were within the world in challenges. They're in a different cycle like Belgium are, in terms of sort of their talent pool. But yeah, I mean, you'd think Uruguay have enough to potentially qualify out of that group. Iran versus New Zealand, 2-2, very entertaining game. Yeah, pretty even, pretty even. Nothing crazy to write about that. Chris Wood playing for New Zealand, the Forest striker, played well enough. Some good goals. Yep. Straight on to France versus Senegal. Very even game. France didn't really do put up much trees in the first half. Senegal, you could argue, probably maybe edged it. And then France hit the afterburners, didn't they? Went 1-0 up, then pegged back to 1-1. And yeah, I mean, I think the highlight is the pass from Elise to Mbappe, fantastic pass, and then a first time finish, superb, and then the long range shot from Mbappe to make it 3-1. Look, yeah, I think the keeper should have saved it. He went with two hands. Frankly, he should have tipped it over with a top hand. I think it was savable. It was still a great shot, but I still think it was savable. So two goals for Mbappe. Didn't really do much in the first half, but then for the last half an hour, that game was on fire. And so, they've got many a gear they can go through. They got just such a ridiculous amount of talent, France. I mean, they didn't really turn up for half the game, and then when they needed to, they put the foot to the pedal. I mean, I would say Elise was about a 6, compared to how he can play. Yeah, heaven help him when Dembele can play much better, and Barcola played really good goal by Barcola as well, actually. Barcola came on to score, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We all know the talent, and from just a pure talent perspective within the squad, France, without a doubt, have the most amount of talent, bar none. There isn't even a comparison with anybody else in the World Cup. I think that's, for me, second is Argentina in terms of they've got world-class keepers, world-class defenders, world-class midfielders, and the genius magician of Messi. They just don't have the depth that France have. And ultimately, do they have the kryptonite? Well, they did it once before. Whether they can produce that again against France, who knows? I mean, France are mercurial, they always have been, but they are mercurial. They can put in one of those first halves where they just sort of don't do anything, and you wonder how. And then you see the second half, and you see the just ridiculous amount of talent that they have, that they can blow anybody in this World Cup away on any given day. And they are that at their best, they're streets ahead for me. And you just need phenomenal amounts of Messi magic and the organization and team ethic and defensive sort of skills of Argentina to really be the one that could probably compete with them. Moving on to Iraq versus Norway. Hey, they were rowing the boat out. Let's get the row out. Let's get the row out, everybody. We're getting the row. Hey, like the Vikings, they were there. They were there in force. Hey, whatever you think about Man City, and we're Liverpool fans, but look, the World Cup is about seeing the very best play at the World Cup. And it's all for that. I'm not happy that Haaland's made it. World Cups are a little bit less sort of magical if the world stars for whatever reason don't make it. And so I'm happy that Haaland's made it to the World Cup so we can see him, perform in that setting. Scored 2 goals. No real surprise. I mean, some great performances by the wingers from Norway, pretty much in control throughout. Could have got a lot more. Look. Ultimately, Haaland will always score you goals without a doubt. He's best goal scorer out and out, goal scorer in the world. And he has an actual striker. Mbappe's an inverted wing; he's not a striker. And you'd obviously put Isak up there, in the top three as well. And it's like, look, he'll always guarantee you goals. If you give him the supply, he'll give you goals. I mean, he's an absolute brute. So yeah, good performance by Norway. It'd be interesting to see how they perform against more sort of sterner opposition. I wouldn't say Iraq really pulled up any trees in that game, but hey, you can only be what's in front of you on that front. We then move on to Argentina versus Algeria. Yeah, isn't it Zinedine Zidane's son that's in goal? Should have saved the first one, and Messi's has to save the first one. It's a good shot, but he has to save. Gets two hands there, has to save that one. It's a good. Yeah, this is my gripe really. There was three of them. There was Pickford's one yesterday. I felt like the first one he should have saved. There's the one for Mbappe, and there's the one for Messi. Look, great shots all in all, but they were quite medium in terms of the height of the goal. They weren't right in the postage stamp of the corner of the goal, giving the keeper no chance. Keeper's got big hands onto these. Really should have saved that for me, but equally, it was what it was, and a fantastic goal. The third goal by Messi was superb. Algeria had a goal disallowed when it was 0-0. Apart from that, pretty much sort of pretty comfortable, wasn't it? Really, run of the mill victory for Argentina. Messi just doing what Messi does, continues to do it. I'm not surprised. He's been ripping it up in the US continually in this gap for the last 4 years. Look, he's just got magic in his boots. He's cold as ice, magic in his boots, and as long as he's got a team around that's going to put a shift in for him and give him the ball in the right conditions, and if you could make an argument, these conditions are perfect. A slightly slower game, give him the ball. Nobody can do what he does with just a couple of seconds of space. There is nobody in the world that can do what Messi does. You give it to him, he can shift it out his feet, curl it into the top corner within 2 seconds at any given moment. He is what that is, the genius of who he is. I think he tied Miroslav Klose as being was it tied for the World Cup goals? I think Mbappe one behind now. I do believe in that. So a hat trick for Messi. Great to see the little magician working his magic as always. Austria Turkey. Sorry, not Austria Turkey. Austria Turkey 3-1. Portugal won. Congo won. Just underwhelming, Portugal, aren't they? Really, just underwhelming. They're at a stage where they have a great midfield, sure they do, but they just don't have. Look, you don't have Pete Ronaldo anymore. Obviously, God rest his soul. Unfortunately don't have Jota either, and looks a bit toothless, frankly. They do have a well-beaten midfield. You can't argue that they don't have PSG midfield playing for them. But equally, they look pretty. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Congo quite comfortable. You could make an argument towards the end. Congo looked like they were more likely to win the game. They got 5 down a couple of times in the break when they looked like they could go and score and actually win the game. Yeah, really unimpressive by Portugal. Then at no point do they look convincing at all. Didn't create that much. And Congo, look, you come out of that game very impressed with Congo. Maybe it's because we're just a bit naive and we expected randomly Portugal to just win easily. But no, Congo, I come out of that. Yeah, fantastic performance by them and very underwhelming by Portugal. And Ronaldo just sort of did next to nothing really, but then they didn't really get any service either. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like Spain, isn't it? That one. I mean, like, at least with Spain, you got an excuse with Yamal and Williams. I don't think Portugal actually have one. This is who Portugal are, really, at this current moment in time. Can they get better from this? Maybe. They can't really get much worse in this performance. I think Spain at least have the hope that they can get their 2 key players actually on the pitch, which will help improve it for them. Then obviously England versus Croatia last night. Well, there's zero defence going on in that game, but what a heck of a game to watch in terms of entertainment. 4-2, fantastic goal by Rashford in the game. Penalty for Kane. He got missed it, got a retake. I mean, it was encroachment, so it was a justified retake, but a bit fortunate for a woeful first penalty. Then they scored to make it 1-0. I think it should have been saved by Pickford personally. I think he should have gone with his top hand. I don't know what he was doing really. I mean, for me, that all day long. I mean, I'm not singling out Pickford, but he really should have saved that one to make it 1-1. They didn't. I mean, it was weird because Croatia, I think, scored two. They had created two opportunities, scored two goals. Not great, not great. I mean, keeper's fault for me on the first one. Not great defensively on the second one. Ultimately, great goal by Rashford. Yeah, great goal by Bellingham as well. I was pretty impressed by England. Pretty impressed. Worried by the defence. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the very fact that Croatia didn't really do much, but still ended up creating two goals is pretty worrying, isn't it? Really, it's one where sure we could have probably have scored seven, and it is one of those. It was one of those wide open games where it could have been 7-3 realistically. So you can't argue that we, without a doubt, deserved the win. But equally, you would have slight worries over just how easy they managed to pick up two goals on us. An injury concern on Declan Rice as well, as we're waiting an update on that. He came off after being substituted. Didn't really see what happened, on that front. After that, we got on to Ghana versus Panama. Late goal for Ghana was pretty much all she wrote in a pretty much non-eventful game. Nothing really happened in that game until that goal at the end. Then Colombia with the last go against Uzbekistan, 3-1 to Colombia. A goal for Diaz. Nothing crazy really going on in that game. Colombia just showing sort of the gap in quality. And when you've got players with the ability of Diaz in that lineup, you would expect Colombia to really be winning that. So all in all, a full-on week, hasn't it, so far? I mean, literally, you've had, two for Haaland, two from Mbappe, three for Messi. What else have we got going on? We've had goals for Barkla. We've had a fantastic performance by Congo, great keeping by Congo, great keeping from Cape Verde, great keeping from Qatar in this World Cup so far. A really enjoyable game. Ironically, Ivory Coast versus Ecuador 1-0 was actually a very enjoyable 1-0 as well. Great to see Isaac, obviously, from putting the Liverpool hat on, get a goal in that game. Yeah, we kick on to the next stage, isn't it? Where the round two of games coming up now, guys. I'm just having a quick look at the games that are coming up for ourselves. So we'll have a little bit look. We've got South Africa today. Be interesting to see how they perform. We've got Switzerland today, and then we're kicking on to Canada versus Qatar. Be intrigued to see how Qatar. I was quite impressed with Qatar. They were not so great in the first half, but really grew into that game, and that keeper really played well. On that front, Mexico, Korea, that I've been looking forward to all week. I think it'll be a fantastic game. I mean, South Korea just, if you want value for money, South Korea, Mexico are just fantastic value for entertainment. If you haven't got a dog in the fight when it comes to actually who you want to win the World Cup, you do worse than watch Mexico, South Korea just purely for goals and creativity and entertainment. I think USA, it'll be interesting to see how they back up that supremely good first half from the other day against Australia. So that one's coming up, obviously, over the weekend. Scotland, Morocco. Once again, another situation with Morocco. Be intrigued to see what Morocco produce. I thought Morocco were amazing against Brazil. Probably one of my standout performers. But I'm not sure whether that's because they did it against Brazil, and I'm not entirely sure how high I really rate Brazil. I never really thought Brazil, for me, were in the top 3 or 4 to win it. But equally, still very impressed with Morocco. So great to hear your thoughts, guys. Who's standing out in the World Cup for yourself? Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, you name it, all of that jazz. We'll be dropping videos, obviously, on Liverpool. That is the channel predominantly. But sporadically throughout the World Cup, to give you sort of a rundown, my views on performances as well. On that front. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of the World Cup. Speak to you more soon. You take care.